Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start on the scrutiny meeting. I think we all know where the facilities are. There are no fire alarms forecast, so if there is a fire alarm, it's a real one, and we have to go outside to the normal place. This is public meeting. Yeah. So, without further ado, should we go to the agenda? And are there any apologies for absence? Clearly no apologies for absence.
We just received apologies from Councillor Archer, Chair, and Councillor Dobbs is here to sub.
Okay, thank you. No public participation. So we move to the minutes. So the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, and there is an amended version of the minutes that have been placed before you. So it's the amended minutes that we are proposing to consider, and the bit that has changed is the bit that is in yellow in the amended minutes. So I'll give you some time to review that.
Chair, can I just ask what was actually changed in this, please?
Well, the whole part of it was changed, I think is the answer, really. I think the main substance of the change is that what was missing from the previous was a statement of the outcome of the work that was clearly laid out in the meeting. Okay, so right, have you all had enough time? Okay, would anybody like to move these minutes?
Can I move the minutes, please?
Nick, okay, and two Nicks. Right. Nick Wilden, Nick Whitehead. Gosh, you have problems over initials as well. Right, thank you very much. Okay, interests. Members are required to declare the existence of any interests. Oh, we have got to vote on it, yes. Should we vote on that? All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. One abstention. Right, interests. Members are required to declare the existence and nature of any interests they may have in subsequent agenda items. These interests are matters that relate to money or that which can be valued as money, as affecting the member, the partner, extended family and close friends. Interests that become apparent at a later stage may be declared at that time. Anybody have any interest to declare? No? Okay, so we move on to performance management and the key performance indicators, which are listed in your agenda pack. Would you like to introduce these?
Yes,
Claire?
Okay, thank you everybody. I'd like to bring to the committee the report for performance against Q3 key performance indicators, and that this be noted by yourselves. In general, it's a very pleasing report. Of the 12 key performance indicators, I can give you updates on 11. Due to the nature of the waste and recycling figures, they're not actually available at this point. They come in about 8 weeks after the end of the quarter, so we'll be able to report on them next time. But of the 11 indicators that are available, 10 of them, that's 91%, have met the target and are a strong, healthy green on a red, amber, green rating. And the other one is at amber. and that one would be the percentage of undisputed invoices that are paid on time. The target is 99 point... oh, sorry, I beg your pardon, I'm looking at quarter two. The one that is amber is the percentage of other planning applications where the target is to be greater than 90% and the actual result was 89%. So a very, very slight miss of the target. And given that quarter two was 92% and quarter one was 92% and quarter two was 94%, I think when we get the full year's outturn, that one will have achieved the target for the year. So a temporary blip. So yeah, in general, a really positive performance in quarter three against these measures.
So when you say the waste and recycling, when the waste and recycling ones have numbers underneath the red, are those numbers relevant here? Or?
Sorry, where are you looking exactly?
On page 11, on page 3 of your report.
Yeah.
So the 57.1 and 57.5.
Yeah, quarter one and quarter two. So they're monitored on a rolling programme.
Yeah.
So as we get into quarter two, we'll have the quarter one figure, and then we update them as they go along. So
sorry, I thought they were, it's just the quarter three that aren't available.
Yes, so it's quarter three we will be able to report on when the quarter's ended.
Okay, thank you.
Next time we come to scrutiny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this report? No. Any comments? Nick?
Feels a little bit green. I mean, I know it's good that we're green, but do we need to put some challenge in? Would be my provocation.
This is a conversation that's been had today. If we are solidly achieving the targets, then there's an opportunity to look at whether we can revise that and make it more stretching. And certainly the next thing that I think we're going to look at is a review of the key performance indicators as a whole, and that does present a great opportunity to tighten those targets up, definitely.
Thank you, Claire. Peter?
Thank you, Chair. The biggest problem, especially recycling, is people don't recycle. A lot of people don't recycle, and they just dip them in the grey bin. We've got to somehow educate people to do more recycling to get us performance better.
And I think that's going to be reflected in the new corporate plan that we want to educate and target recycling low points and bring them up. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, Roger.
Can I just add my thanks? Sorry. Can I just add my thanks and appreciation to the council staff in the achievement there of the average number of working days lost, which is very impressive. So it's a really good vote of confidence in the authority and the way it works.
I'd like to express my thanks as well, and also turning to the waste and recycling. I would point out that we are actually one of the best in the country, or in England anyway. There are very few that we were in the top 10 at one stage. I'm not sure where we are now because we haven't got the latest figures, but that would make us an extremely good performer. And so I think there's all credit to the team that actually carry that work out. Wales as a country has set a target for its local authorities of 70%, and many of those aren't meeting those targets, but Welsh local authorities are getting to 65% or thereabouts, and maybe that if we do decide to change our numbers, then we might look at what's happening in Wales and see if we can improve along those lines.
When we look at the KPI review, there are now national statistics coming in from Oflog, which is the Office for Local Government, replacing the Audit Commission, and they are focusing on national benchmarking for waste and recycling. So we can see exactly, as you've requested, where we stand, not just against neighbouring councils, but against the whole country. So that will be useful data in the future.
Thank you. Okay, Laura.
Sorry, just following on from that, one of the very few red bits is actually percentage of household waste which has been sent for recycling, and we just missed the 58.5% target at 57. So if we're talking about stretching that target further, we might struggle there. That might not be one that we want to stretch.
True enough. I think that's for the review to consider. Thank you. Would anybody like to move these that we note, is it, or Roger?
Yes, that's right. If I could propose that, please. Yeah.
Peter's seconding, so Peter Slack is seconding. So all those in favour of the recommendations? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So moving on to the next item, which is, go back to my page. Yeah. The draft terms of reference public performance management. We've just done that one, haven't we? Okay, agenda item 6, which is the key performance indicator review.
That's me again.
There again.
Yeah, get it all done in one big blitz. I'll go into a bit more depth in this one because we've done quite a considerable piece of work on this. At the last Scrutiny Committee, some of you members did mention that was it an appropriate time to look at the key performance indicators, and were they doing their job of measuring the organisation's health? So we've looked at some of the data that's now coming in from Offlog, taken into account some of the work that was done by the external consultants Circling Squares in June 2023. They highlighted a large number of performance indicators that we could potentially use. And we also do have a project and performance management officer group, so they were tasked with talking to their service managers and trying to see if we could refresh this, balancing what would show the organisation's health, but also what would be useful data going forward to members and potentially members of the public who wanted to get a snapshot of how things were. So there was quite a lengthy review process where we looked at the different indicators that were possible. It was suggested that perhaps we look at indicators related to income, specifically things like the garden waste subscriptions or car parking charges, and these were rejected because they don't measure our performance. So I'll go through section 3. We looked at a list of the ones that we thought we should retain, which were things like invoices paid on time. This is the table in point 3.1. Keeping an eye on the household waste for recycling, as mentioned, which will also be reported within the corporate plan. Sickness, council tax and domestic rates, and speed of processing new claims and change of circumstances, because they're everyday important services that our public rely on and want to know are doing well. Some of the ones we wanted to take out, which were the planning applications, because they were felt to be reported in a bit more depth, but as we'll come on to later, they're also going to now be monitored nationally through Offlog, so we can kind of tweak our reporting to be a bit more in line with the national picture and the national benchmarking. And so the ones that we suggested to add are an indicator on percentage of residents who are very or fairly satisfied with the way that Derbyshire Dales District Council runs things, so that we routinely collect satisfaction with our services and we keep an eye on it and we monitor it as much as we're able. Waste and recycling collections that are missed is obviously very important to our residents, how we do in collecting bins and how many we miss and what we do about that. So to actually put it in this reporting makes it very open to the public to engage with. We wanted to reflect the success of the garden waste service, so we want to put in an indicator to show how that's been taken up and what percentage of the district's households are taking it up, so both figures can be reported on. And then the Clean and Green team actually requested that we actually report on their work. So what they do in terms of street cleaning for dog fouling, litter, graffiti, and what they do in terms of cleaning up fly tipping. They felt that this was really useful data to residents and would show the work that's been done day in, day out by the council. There's a measure to look at the work done by our business support unit in terms of the calls they take and how they handle them. There will be a slight potential revision to that one because the measure of abandoned calls does include people who just put the phone down or realise they've dialed the wrong number. So it might not quite reflect the performance of the unit. So if we amend that to missed calls in future, that means literally people that we missed rather than people who just decided they wanted to hang up. And then we wanted to add in quarterly staff turnover, another measure that measures the health of an organisation. Are we seeing a large-scale exodus? Is there anything to be notified by the way the workforce is changing and developing? And we, in 3.5, also now have quite a long list of indicators that Oflog want us to report on as part of their national benchmarking, and that does include 3 waste indicators, a number of specific finance indicators like debt servicing and total debt. And then they also want us to report on planning applications, as I said, in a slightly different version, rather than having the traditional major, minor and other planning applications, which have been reported on for about, well, since best value in the early whenevers. They've now bundled it up so that you have percentage of major planning applications decided on time and then percentage of non-major. So it's basically major and then everything else as a large group. And then they want to look at the appeal, so there's the quality of getting through the actual applications and then the quality of how they're done. So the percentage of major planning applications overturned on appeal and then non-major. So you look at both the quantity and the quality. So if I direct you straight to Appendix 1, this is the full list of the ones that we're going to report on. We did want a small basket of indicators, and we've got to 29 from 12, but the Oflog ones aren't always updated as often as the ones we will do ourselves. So a lot of them may be 6 monthly or annual, whereas the ones that are very directly related to our services will be quarterly. So you will still get a good overview of performance, both nationally and literally on the ground in our own district. So we're hopeful that you will be happy with those indicators and that you're happy to move that forward. There are in the appendices a little kind of tick box review of the process we went through and why certain indicators were chosen and certain weren't against the criteria. And we've also included the full list that came through from Circling Squares, primarily because it does actually show that a lot of the key ones we were already doing, and the ones we weren't, we're now going to take on board for the next whatever period. I'm assuming at least a 4-year period to match our new corporate plan. So I hope that that meets with your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. That was very comprehensive and clear. Thank you.
Thank you. I just realised I probably bored you all to tears.
No, not at all. No, it's really, you've made it really quite interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Nick.
Oh, yeah, no, it was really good kind of description. Just a couple of questions. I'm not I was maybe hoping to see something about kind of holiday kind of homes or second homes within these targets, because it's probably something we should be looking at with greater scrutiny kind of as a council. I've certainly been pestered by a couple of residents who think we're missing out on quite a lot of income, especially around kind of business waste collection, which is being done through residential waste. And it'd be really interesting just to know, and because we are such a tourist destination, actually having that sort of tangible information about kind of how many holiday homes, Airbnbs, these type of facilities, and kind of would be a good target. So that's more of a comment rather than you to answer a question, unless you have a rationale about why we wouldn't have included it.
Only to say that the performance indicators are much more everyday, down to earth, what we're actually doing. So things like the issue of empty homes and holiday homes, that would probably be considered more under the corporate plan, where we can take a strategic and a long-term approach. So I think you'll find that there are, I don't know if Helen can support me, I'm pretty sure that there are measures to look at holiday home usage within the corporate plan. It might be something I need to take away and check.
I mean, obviously, members agreed the fairly chunky paper at council not that long ago around the council tax on second homes. So I think it's a fairly important issue for members. My assumption, therefore, is that success is success then, and what we should be thinking about measuring a reduction in the number of holiday homes, Airbnbs and the like. What would that be telling us?
I think in my mind, what do we know already in terms of, do we actually know what type of these property, these offerings are in our district? Because unless you know about them, you can't make sure that they're following the right regime and support them to do that. And then secondly, I think my aim would be to see that we are drawing the right amount of income from their use, so that we've got someone using their second home as a holiday home, therefore they should be paying for trade waste, but we're not convinced that that is happening to the extent it should be. So I think some sort of measure would have been useful for us to be able to sort of target it and then to start measuring, because we might be doing absolutely brilliant, but I've not seen any data to sort of kind of back it up. So it'd be really interesting. And there's just my second point, just on number 19, it says percentage of undisputed invoices paid on time. What percentage? I mean, it's just open-ended, is it? It's quite an easy target to meet, that one.
I'll just have to find the right page for that one. I might need to go back to the previous report. It is quite a high target, if I recall. The target is 99%. So yeah, and for quarter one of this year we had 99.34%, little drop to 98.95, and then back up to 99.5. So I think it is something that is, we get a lot of emails about making sure that we process our invoices as promptly and efficiently as possible.
Thank you, Nick. Before I come to you, Roger, sorry, Councillor G, Gareth. Claire, can I ask a question about, which follows on from Nick Whitehead's point? I noticed that you haven't got the car parking income in as a KPI because it doesn't determine, it's not a determinant of corporate health. Now, I imagine that would be true also of the number of buy-to-let houses, sorry, the number of holiday lets in the district, but it is a corporate plan. Both of those would be corporate plan issues.
Yeah.
So can you perhaps describe the difference between a KPI associated with the corporate plan performance and those that are associated with organisational health? Because the ones here are about organisational health, I understand.
I think maybe the best way to describe it would be that your KPIs are short-term and easily measurable, so they're generally figures and quite easy to digest at a glance, whereas our corporate plan priorities are much more encompassing. They're strategic, they're long-term, they might take a couple of years to accomplish, and the outcome might not be easily measurable. So if one of them is to improve recycling rates and improve education, that might be easily measured in an uptake in the rates, but you could improve a lot of people's education very well. You could do a lot of work on that, but they still get it wrong. Or, they don't actually bother to do it, or the people you've educated are in the right place. So there's not necessarily as clear a correlation between the data for a corporate strategic priority, because you...
So we'll be dealing with corporate plan KPIs, performance KPIs at an outcome level, and also at a delivery operational level at a later stage. I think they form the basis of a working group or a task and finish group under the Scrutiny Committee. So I think that it's in place to develop those, and we can really I think we can park both yours and the car parking in as corporate plan KPIs, which we will. I mean, I'll be very interested in those numbers that you're suggesting as well. And so, can we park that and take it forward in one of the working groups? Thank you very much, Gareth.
Yeah, thank you very much, Claire, for all that. One of the things I picked up that you alluded to was that the Clean and Green team wanted to be part of this and to be reported upon. And the only negative feedback that I've had, from my sort of connections with parishes, is that they didn't seem to perform that well in Ashford last year. In fact, they pinpointed this in several meetings, that the actual work that they were supposed to do just didn't happen in the way it had in previous years. I haven't had anything like that in Bakewell or over Haddon, but Ashford in particular, and I've pointed this out to them. So I don't know if that can be monitored in terms of scrutiny or whatever, but Ashford was certainly, it was brought up on numerous occasions to me.
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, the white space system that they use to monitor this in the CRM system will capture some geographical information, because it needs to send the operatives to the right place to deal with the problem. How easy it will be to extract that data, whether we can easily go down to ward level. I think at the moment it's envisaged that it would be a figure for the whole of the district as a total.
Yeah, I mean, this is from the parish council and the reporting on what actually happens on the ground. So
we can certainly ask the question, is this reporting feasible? One of the things we try and bear in mind with the performance indicators is that wherever possible, we want data that's easily used and doesn't require officers' time to spend a lot of time preparing the reports, because then the people who should be doing the work are not doing it. So if we can get the data off the system and they don't do a lot to show their performance, and that's the best way of doing it.
Yeah, so. And the second point, which I'm glad Nick's brought this up with regard to this new policy on second homes, this scrutiny committee is important here, because I would like to make sure that we see what the consequences of this policy and we actually understand it properly. So it's not what I say or what you say or whatever, it's actually what the figures tell us of what actually happens. So we need some real, and I think this is something the scrutiny could look at, of exactly what is likely to be the outcome of the policy in terms of, the additional tax on second home owners. And Nick's alluded to the fact that, I think he was alluding to the fact, this is my guess, because if you're a holiday home owner and your property is registered for business rates, then you're not entitled to have your bins collected by us, by our services, so they should be paying for private companies to do it. But on the other hand, there's a lot of second home owners who are renting properties out and not currently registered for business rates, paying council tax. So I'd like to know that we're on it in terms of the figures of the ones that skip over onto non-domestic rates and stuff like that. So
I think we'll need to go and do some research into what we've got, and as you say, what the data available is and how we manage that. But that's certainly something that we can have a look at. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Roger.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I hesitate to suggest a 30th KPI, because that's quite a daunting list already. And I do understand that a lot of the pressure has been to reduce the ones relating to planning, and that they're measured nationally by Oflog. But one that troubles me, the absence of one. I don't know whether it is too late to consider including this, and this has come up because of the concerns of a number of residents, is the length of time taken on enforcement actions. Now I know they're very complicated. That's the nature of the beast, really, in a way. but there is a concern that sometimes people try to get around the rules and run rings around us, and that can delay it might blunt the appetite perhaps of the planning officers to carry out things quickly, or that they may be delaying things because they're seeking informal resolutions. But to the residents on the ground who have to bear the consequences of things that are carried out without proper planning permission, these can have very, very serious impacts on their daily lives. So I don't know if there is a form of words which we could use to encompass the length of time that enforcement proceedings take, and I'm not quite sure when you would measure it from until, but I think it's perhaps the missing part of the planning jigsaw as far as these KPIs go.
Yeah. It would certainly be something we can have a look at, whether that data is available. Because we do want to report these quarterly to give you an up-to-date picture on performance, something that will be very onerous to do quarterly is not something we'd look to do in this forum. That may be something that is better seen as a strategic thing to be reported over a longer period. But we can certainly investigate and see whether the systems support collecting that data. And to address your point about a 30th indicator, the reason for bringing it to scrutiny was to get the views of elected members as to what you think the residents want to see, what you think is useful reporting, to check the progress of performance and how well things are going. So, no, your suggestions are very welcome, and we'll see what data and what resources are available to find that information and see if it's presentable. Thank you.
I think, Helen, you've got something to add there.
It's very doable. Just a quick Google has demonstrated that Eastleigh have a performance report on enforcement, so things like cases registered, cases concluded, number of formal action cases, updates on enforcement appeals, those tiny little things that indicate the overall health of the enforcement function are very, very doable.
Does that find approval from other members? Yes, I think there's a consensus that we would like that added to the list then. So can we add that we will, to the recommendations, that we include an agenda, a KPI about enforcement? Okay.
Yeah, it's particularly the time that things seem to take.
The time it takes for something.
No, I can't
Yeah.
even find which of my 16 pages that bit's on.
Okay, right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there will be a. Would you like a form of words, Roger? Helen says she's got them. Okay. Before we move on to the recommendations, can I ask whether we've got we've established a working group for this to take the KPIs forward?
So we have. So it was obviously discussed at the last meeting. I've not got any members for it just yet, so it hasn't been properly established. But I wondered, given the spirit of the conversation we've had, whether there's some members that want to get involved. We're at a fairly perfect moment in order to develop the KPIs on the basis that the organisation and the council have just agreed the corporate plan. We've agreed the budget. We're in the process of doing the more detailed delivery plans for the corporate plan and ultimately the other services that we provide within the council. So it's a perfect moment in which to do it. Members have got some background papers here already to start to do that work. So I can really just envisage a half day, a fairly intensive half day in which to go through the corporate plan and start to plan out some of those performance indicators. I mean, clearly Claire's done an enormous amount of work and the other colleagues, as well as part of the project and performance management group, have done a lot of work in setting out to members the totality of the performance measures that we need to use. But clearly there are baskets within that indicate and are relevant to things like the corporate plan and relevant to other service plans and the like. So I think we've got a good starter for 10, and I think that for those members that may be struggling with their time, we could put something together to have a fairly intensive half-day session in which there's a start, a middle and an end, and we come out of there with some indicators for further discussion, if that's helpful, Chair.
Can I suggest that we ask officers to produce candidate KPIs for the specific areas that they are responsible for within the corporate plan, so that the members then review those. So the purpose of the working group or the task and finish group is to review the KPIs associated with the corporate plan that officers propose, with a view to then making a recommendation back to this committee. Would that be okay? So can we include that also in the recommendations of this report, which is okay? So
How do we want to approach the working group? Do we want one, or do we just bring the report back for discussion at committee?
oh, that's a good point. Ellen is asking whether we just bring the report back to this committee, or whether we have a working group to review it. Does anybody have any opinion on that? Just bring it back to the committee? Laura?
I think that sounds like at least one whole meeting's worth of work, so it might need to be a special meeting of this committee, might it? Or I don't know how much other stuff we've got on. We seem to have a fairly busy programme of work going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And then, but if we did have one session in it and then just get it done, because otherwise we'll just end up lagging behind. We've got a lot on our plate.
Okay, so instead of having another working group or task and finish group, we just bring it back to this committee in a special meeting. Okay. So there are now. Would anybody like to move the 4? Is it 4? Well, it's 2, isn't it, really?
2 recommendations.
2 recommendations, plus the additional recommendation to include a KPI on enforcement of planning applications. Nick?
I was just going to move it.
Okay, and then that also included within the recommendations that a request to officers to provide candidate KPIs associated with the corporate plan that will then be reviewed at this meeting. Okay, so you're going to move it, Nick. Okay, will anybody second that? Gareth, thank you very much. So all those in favour? Right, and that's unanimous again. Thank you. Good. So moving on. Draft terms of reference for the public consultation and engagement exercise. Pages 21 to 24. Here we are. Helen, were you going to introduce this? Or?
I think I was actually going to put Councillor Shelley on the spot as the person that put it forward a little while ago, if that's at all possible, Councillor Shelley.
An unenviable task. I did recognise this, actually, I must admit. I thought, this is interesting. Normally the reports are written by officers. And I hadn't reread it word for word since then, but it stemmed from a discussion we had last summer as a committee, where one of the items which particularly I think members felt was significant and worthy of further consideration was our overall performance in terms of how we consult with the public, how we engage with them in a wider sense. And this is it's particularly pertinent to myself at the moment, because I know that the council is going to be shortly embarking on its next stage of consultation on the local plan. And I have this fear, this horror, that people freeze when they see something like a local plan heading in their direction. And it really is incumbent on us to try and humanise the way that we engage with people, and the way that we sort of elicit responses which are meaningful, both to them and to us as well. So that was really my motivation for looking at this particularly. But I think Nick, sorry, Councillor Whitehead, I think you had a particular concern as well about how the public felt they were engaging or not, or how we were measuring public engagement. So this was, I suppose, a less than subtle attempt to try and roll those two things in together. So from memory, and it is really from memory, I think what it did was try to summarise the steps that the council already took to consult with people. I do move down to, on page 41, under issues, that very, very point about effective, meaningful, relevant and inclusive. You know, 4 massive long words there. And I don't pretend to have I wish I did have the Holy Grail, the answer on what those actually look like. But again, we're back to not only ways of exciting and engaging people to want to talk to us, but outcomes that process reveals that are smart, that are measurable again. There's no point in asking people really about things that aren't relevant or we're not going to be able to act on. So I accept it's a fine balancing act. But there are some lessons, I think, perhaps which can be learnt from other authorities. And there's 7 points here which were pinpointed in the approach in terms of really both looking internally to see if some of our officers and existing consultants had thoughts on how we might improve on that, but also looking externally as well. And I know that you just had an example just now about how there's some KPIs from another authority that might work well, particularly well for us as well. So it's best practice that's being done elsewhere that I would hope we could look at and try and incorporate here, with the result of coming in with a fact-finding report at the end.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Nick?
Yeah, no, thanks. Just to pick up on Roger's point, it was quite interesting when we had that presentation kind of many months ago when we were all in the chamber and we had that consultancy firm come and feed us back this information. I mean, the big reflection was that half the information they presented, which we were paying them for, was not relevant to what we do as a council. And so kind of maybe it's something about the quality of the companies that we use, because you would hope that if you're paying an external kind of company for their expertise, and you would hope they would be expert in their field of market research or survey gathering, that they would understand us as a client first and foremost, which they didn't seem to, and therefore then construct surveys and questions and engagement strategies that meets the needs of our residents and communities. And I don't think they did that. And I think to be paid, God, I mean, I fear to ask when I kind of, because the more I ask about how much we pay for things, the more I fall off my chair. But I wonder kind of what the level of cost that we pay for this company, whether we actually got value for money out of it. So I think that's something that we should look carefully at. And then probably, why are we using them? We're going to do this exercise again. If we can't be guaranteed of the quality of their output, it delivers such little value that I kind of, so anyway, so they're my rambling points.
I've just thought of another KPI actually, value for money from consultants, but I'm not quite sure, I really am not sure how you would measure that.
Gareth?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Councillor Whitehead says. Beware of consultants, especially, you know, because you're just paying for something that you already know on a letter basis. You know, we're a small council in an area where we've got good elected members who know their areas. You've got officers who are exceptional. Why do we need to be paying all this money to external consultants? It's a joke as far as I'm concerned. And in terms of consultation on local plans, be careful of the results you get, because the reality is, as soon as the neighbourhoods see all the sites, you'll just get a lot of people complaining about houses being built next to them, And you're going to get the same when you do the statutory consultation, which will be a mirror image of the additional consultation. And, you know, we have town and country planners who are trained to try and provide, you know, a plan for the district. And it just gets full of noise about residents complaining. You know, they all want the houses, but they don't want them next to them, and that's what you'll get. And we'll have got officers having to deal with it all twice.
Are you suggesting we don't do any consultation? Or is there a measured way in which you do the consultation? Is that what you're suggesting?
We've already agreed to do the additional consultation, but, you know, you're going to do it again. Well, I've just said what I've said. And it's important, but a lot of the responses will just be from people who are directly affected by the fact that there's a site directly in their village. Like if you're in Tansley and there's another 100 houses in Tansley, everybody in Tansley will be up in arms. And it's the same in wherever it happens.
Thank you, Gareth. Laura?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, are we talking in these terms of reference about just public consultation, or does that include external professional consultants, or are we talking about engaging professional consultants to tell us how to do public consultation?
I don't think we're suggesting we engage professional consultants to tell us how to do it, are we?
Well, only if they've got ideas that we need and expertise that we need to take on board. I mean, I think the answer about the consultants, I agree actually, I think with you, Gareth, in many ways, but sometimes you do actually find ones who are actually quite good. Unfortunately, they tend to be the really expensive ones. I think in terms of who this is aimed at, this is for me anyway, it's squarely aimed at public consultation rather than consultation of outside experts.
Okay, so yes, Helen.
Thank you. Just to say, it's interesting having this discussion this evening as we are starting to prepare a consultation in respect of the car park review that's been undertaken by the car park working group. So just to provide some context, the council does have a consultation and engagement strategy. It was set in, I think it was 2021, and runs out in 2027. So as part of any work that members are wanting to do, I think it would be important to review that strategy and maybe compare and contrast how it's been used as part of consultations so far, and how well it's been used as well. I know myself and Claire have been quoting at each other the gunning principles all day long, to be quite frank, which has been very helpful, and I'm very grateful to you for reminding us of that, Councillor Shelley. The other issue is as well is around, we talk a lot about consultation, and that is all around having a view and asking the public whether they share that view in full, in part, or not at all. There is the softer thing around the engagement side, in which you're continually, as an open council, receiving feedback, and we do that through a range of different things, such as corporate complaints, and looking at things like freedom of information requests, which is also on the agenda this evening as well. So there are different levels of which the council needs to be open to feedback and find but the public need to find ways in which to give that feedback, but also for that feedback to be received well, understood and learnt from. That's really important, as well as getting the process for consultation right, and that consultation is proportionate to the scale of the change that is being proposed. If you're making very small amendments, smaller consultations, smaller periods of time, bigger, more fundamental changes need something a bit more different, and that are able to use a range of different methods, not just solely relying possibly on a single digital way of doing things, that people are able to get paper copies, they're on deposit in certain places in the community. So there has got to be that range that the council has in which to engage and consult with the public, and I think that should come out of this the work that has been proposed by members this evening.
Okay, Roger, again, and then Nick.
Yes, I mean, if it helps, I'm just trying to think, because the danger is, of course, that you start generating large-scale exercises which run out of control and out of resources. Part of me thinks that if we're going to try and crack this, it might be worthwhile trying to work with possibly town and parish councils, because at least that would give us some more boots on the ground, particularly in terms of local knowledge as well. So they might be able to assist with some of the consultations that we do. And the other thing that, I didn't put this down in this, I don't think, but the thing that really, really worries me, I suppose, is that all too often we find that where there are public consultations, and this isn't a criticism of the council, but it's almost a natural effect of the dreaded word consultation, is that it tends to be the usual suspects who respond. And I know, a half-decent organisation that will try and filter for that will weight responses, but then you start getting down into situations where the number of young people, for example, the number of people perhaps between the age of 18 and 30 who respond, you can count on the figures of one or two hands, and so the statistical significance starts to get very, very wobbly at that point. And I think not just as a means of drawing out those people who are going to be, they're going to be the leaders of Derbyshire Dales in a few years' time, hopefully a really, really short period of time, rather than having to wait until they're in their 50s and 60s, in order to instill confidence with them. If we can bend over backwards to include measures, non-digital measures, which excite them and engage them, then I'd be really happy.
Yeah, no, so I'm kind of sort of echoing kind of Roger and Gareth's kind of point, really. Kind of, especially when we do these large scale sort of engagements where we want to sort of hear the voice of the Dales, actually using the kind of mechanisms that we have already, rather than bringing external companies in that probably don't know our area very well. We should be sort of kind of working alongside parish councils, other community groups, business groups, to really hear the voice of people and the young people, kind of in as many different ways as we possibly can. And I know that probably means that kind of probably that then falls to someone within the council, one of the council officers, then to try and pull together and analyse how we do it. But we're lucky that we live in a world where we have clever systems that we can buy into. Even if you just use something as simple as SurveyMonkey, it comes with analytical tools built in that really kind of helps kind of drive that sort of efficiency. I suppose in terms of setting the questions that we want answered, some are obvious and some will come from the KPIs. Some will be a bit more nuanced, that really give us a flavour of the area that we are or the area that we want to be. And I wonder whether then this group plays a part in terms of how we set that. So maybe we don't set the survey ourselves, but before the survey is done, we scrutinise it to kind of make sure that we think that the right sort of questions that we're asking our residents would seem like a valuable kind of tool for us to kind of use.
Okay. I think before we go on, can I just say, returning to the strategy that we have, consultation strategy we have at the moment, it is a very, very, very long document, and it's covering a huge amount of ground, but it's mainly associated with planning, local plan and planning, and my feeling is that it's not fit for purpose at all and needs to be completely reconsidered. There are a variety of different reasons you do consultation. One is to get opinions, and another is to get local knowledge. There may be a lot of others as well, I don't know, but opinions and local knowledge would certainly be two reasons for doing consultation, and we blur the distinction our consultation strategy is not looking for local knowledge, it only looks for opinion, and I think that's a mistake, and I think we really need to look at it from a fundamental basis of what are the reasons we're doing consultation in individual areas, and then focusing in on the best instruments for consultation in those areas. At the moment, we don't seem to do that, and we've got an overlong document which is very difficult to understand and needs complete rewriting, in my opinion. Okay.
Yeah, just coming back to when you think about the consultation on the local plan, because what the local plan actually is to provide a future for young people, and yet the actual consultation is usually the people who are actually reacting to it are people. So we're trying to provide homes for people who haven't got one now and have probably not even thought about owning a home. And some of these people might still be children at school, well, most of them are, or some of them are not even born yet. So, but we're asking for answers from people who already own homes and already have an estate. And of course they're trying to protect their estate. So somehow we need to get to the minds, or do we need to go into schools and ask the children in the schools what they think? But we've got to think for them rather than reacting to the answers of people who have already sorted. So it's the people who want a home in the future and we know will need one. And those answers, if you look at all the responses to consultations, it really is just people who've got a house and how does this impact me?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Chair. I think Roger and Nick's got it right, really. Gareth's, it's going into school, but I think they're a little bit too young, to be honest. I think Gareth and Nick's got it right. Parish councils, town councils are a source of knowledge, which they gain. I'm both like. I'm a parish councillor and a district councillor. I get as many emails as a parish councillor do as a district councillor from different, from residents. Residents do get a storage of all these things from local people and are a really good source of information and consultation. So I do support Roger and Nick's idea of involving town and parish councils. Thank you, Chair.
So
all I was going to say was, aren't we getting a bit lost in the reads here a little bit? And actually, don't we just need to get on and do the assessment just to see where it's going to lead us, if that makes sense?
Good point.
Before we jump to outcomes, as it were.
Yeah, and I was going to suggest that we need a working group or task and finish group to do this.
Sorry, may I?
Yeah.
Just to say that we do have the strategy, as Helen quite rightly noted. That is also backed up by an action plan, which runs on a 2-year basis and is reported annually. There is room for improvement. I don't normally acknowledge this to councillors, but there were a few gaps in the reporting, which was where I think officers had done work without realising that specifically was in the consultation plan. So while we did the work and while it was successful, when it came to actually reporting back on it, we didn't quite marry up the dot the I's and cross the T's. So that work actually comes to an end, that plan comes to an end at the end of this month. It's up until 2024. So there is, again, an opportunity within the current structures to refresh that plan and say, what do we want to focus on as consultation outcomes for the next period of time, 2 years, 4 years. And consultation at the moment falls under my remit, which will then go under Helen. So another thing I'd like to mention is we've talked about communication. Well, by bringing consultation under Helen, that makes the link a lot closer between consultation and communication, which I think will address some of the points we've mentioned in terms of going out effectively to the people we want to reach and then effectively using their views once we have them. So I think there's improvements are in the offing already.
Maybe I'm confusing things then. Mike Hayes brought a paper on consultation to C&E in 2021. Is that
I didn't
paper?
join until July 2023,
oh, okay.
so I cannot
right.
speak to that. I'm sorry.
Okay, so that I think is the current paper. Is
I can talk. I've got a suggestion. I mean, I'm just. I wonder if there is a I mean, the consultation and engagement strategy that I'm looking at is a fairly short, sharp document, 10 pages, that blends a sort of description and prescription of what activities should be undertaken as part of community consultation and engagement, and provide actually helpful parameters for officers for assessing the consultation needs of any changes to service delivery. So it's a really good document as it is, and has been very well used today, hasn't it, Claire?
I was actually thinking, good Lord, I haven't read a long one that's 41
Yes.
pages.
So I wonder if, given that there is an action plan and we're in the process of refreshing it, whether there's a bit of an opportunity here for members maybe to receive that action plan and scrutinise progress against it at a meeting. And then if members are wanting to do some further work in the spirit of the terms of reference that we've got in front of us, we can then progress it from that basis next time round or the time round after. I wondered how Councillor Shelley would feel about that.
Personally, I mean, as soon as we can have some impact, the better, I think. As I say, I am feeling that we're a bit like a rabbit in the headlights with the local plan, and part of my motivation was to try and just reach the parts that we don't normally reach in terms of the consultation on that.
I wonder whether we're actually talking about the local plan is actually covered by this consultation engagement strategy.
It does appear to be covered in assessment in one using evidence of DDDC approaches, so surely that feeds into that framework that Roger's put forward.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to give the committee the wrong advice at this moment in time, but I think what I'm hearing is that there is a need to get the consultation on the local plan right, that there's a right balance of who we speak to and how those responses are weighted to some respect. So there's the local plan issue, and then there is a separate issue around broader other types of consultation that the council has to do legally in some respects, and that the council chooses to do. And I've got the clear sense that the current priorities of the council are to really reduce the bar on when to go out to consultation and to engage ultimately with the public, that we want to hear a stronger voice from the public. So maybe there is something in there to look at. So I think maybe then having maybe a paper that comes to the next committee meeting that sets out what the plans are for consultation on the local plan for members to scrutinise. Does that sound fair? Yeah? And then the action plan, Claire, would that be ready for to have a look at as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea, is that it will be ready to go from the 1st of April. I'm hoping that we can tie it quite closely to the corporate plan. So that does make the timescales a bit tight, as that was only agreed on the 29th. But by tying it to the corporate plan, I think that means that our consultation then supports the objectives of the Progressive Alliance for the next 4 years much more closely, which I think will be the best way forward. So, yes, hopefully. I mean, yeah.
In that case, we have some recommendations to consider here. The first is to bring a paper to the next scrutiny committee covering the plan for the local plan consultation, and would that include detailed questions as well as the plan, or just the timescales for the plan?
I think I probably need to speak with Mike Hayes
yeah.
About that, Chair. But yeah, we can start to build it up and see what's possible.
And then a plan for the broader consultations that we undertake. An action plan, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to move away from the local plan consultation and to look at other large-scale consultations that we've done, and in Ashbourne we've done 2 quite recently. That's Ashbourne Reborn and the air quality one. To what extent have we looked at those consultations critically for lessons learned? Did we ask the right questions in the right way? Do we appraise them after we've done them?
I haven't been asked to. I know that my colleagues have taken these consultations very seriously. They've been described as heavy duty, and I think that that work of learning lessons has been done perhaps more informally than formally. Certainly people were very keen to say that the Ashbourne Reborn consultation was gold standard and that it was something that we should try and duplicate as much as possible. There was concern that it was very resource and time intensive, so there's a need to balance how good we need to be at each level of consultation. But I know that when we spoke at a Corporate Services Away Day, the process of learning lessons and the process of project debriefing is, I know, something Helen is quite keen to push as a way of the council learning. So it's certainly something that can be suggested to the people involved. Can we have a lessons learned? Can we have a debrief to use going forward? I think that's a very solid suggestion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I mean, it was just really in the context of, here's the consultation, this was the type of language we used, these were the type of questions we had, and we then apply that lesson to the next one, and so that's in place. Yeah.
I mean, we do learn those lessons informally without necessarily communicating it. For I hope that the survey that Councillor Whitehead has referred to isn't the resident survey that was done in February 2023, because on paper that was very successful. We wanted 1,500 responses, we had 1,900, and there were a lot, particularly from the hard to reach 18 to 34 age group. But again, it was quite resource intensive, because they literally sent people onto the streets of the major towns and stopped people in the street to answer the questions, you know, on a tablet. So that was another reason we had a consultant, because they had the ability to do that, and then to do all the complex demographics to match up the groups and do all that sort of thing.
So I would just put a challenge there, which sort of links very much into sort of what Peter's saying about how you learn lessons. Because that is exactly the presentation I'm referring to, because the information that came back on that, I think kind of 2 of the top 3 were not even a district council's responsibility, they were county council. And I think that does the survey a disservice. You're absolutely right, no doubt a lot of work went into it, a lot of effort and planning. But if you're asking the wrong questions, which then give us no value in terms of you as officers, in terms of making better decisions and better plans, and us as councillors in terms of that strategic sort of vision in terms of what we want for this area, it's really poor data where we haven't asked the right questions in the first place. So I would probably say there's probably a point which is maybe alludes back to the point I said earlier about maybe using the scrutiny committee to test that before you go out and then ask real people. So we're confident and we have assurance that, yeah, we're asking the key questions that will make a difference to how we make decisions, because surely that's why we want the information. We don't just want to sort of we don't just want good feedback for the sake of good feedback because it makes us look good as a council. We want to be the best council possible. You only do that through real hard work and understanding yourself, not kind of almost kind of peering through rose-tinted glasses because you've asked questions which you know you're going to get a good answer to.
Yeah, I was really going to say, you need to be careful when you say that people come back with those answers that might be county council. I mean, I'm sure all of us here at some point have been asked when the potholes are going to be sorted. And obviously and you have to sit there but then isn't that a lesson for us to learn in a broader communication space, that to say, not just stand there and go, that's not our job, but we'll help support you do that. And it feels slightly different. So even though it might be a public perception, it's still their perception, and we can't ignore that, if that makes sense.
I know, absolutely, and it's a good point, because I know it's not about shutting down what the public have to say. I think that probably comes into how you analyse and then present back to us as leaders of because is it adding any value to us that the most complained about thing is, say, potholes or highways? Well, we probably know that anyway just from the feedback. I mean, probably at the moment 50% of what I get in my emails is about potholes, and I have to do a very nice email to explain I'm not the person responsible for it, and I link them in with their county councillor, and I do that signposting. But in terms of what that brings for me to bring value to this place, it doesn't really bring any value. So I would say that, yeah, of course you can't control what people say, but you can control how you interpret and filter it through, so you get really good quality analysis that then becomes a valuable tool, not just a kind of an echo chamber of stuff we already know.
Okay, I think this is probably something that we can note, but I think we've got two recommendations on the table, and we'd like to include, Helen's proposing that we also include that we analyse the results for the lessons that we can learn from undertaking previous surveys. Would anybody like to move that we I have to remember what we decided to do now. Yeah, can you read it out?
So the proposal is that so we note Councillor Shelley's terms of reference. The committee's next meeting that we consider the consultation approach to the local plan, that we also consider the action plan aligned to the council's communication and engagement strategy, and the lessons learnt from, was it, you have to help me here, Councillor Dobbs, was it Ashbourne Reborn and the Ashbourne Air Quality Management?
Those were two that came to mind, a bit Ashbourne orientated.
I think they will do, Chair.
I think we have previous consultations. I think, yeah. Would anybody like to move those? Nick, okay, Nick Whitehead and Roger Shelley. All those in favour? Yep. Unanimous, I think. Yep. Okay. So we've done the public consultation. We move on to flooding scrutiny. The flooding scrutiny exercise.
Thank you, Chair. I think a start would be important to be candid at the start that we've not been able to progress this as quickly as we would like, but it is hope now, as colleagues in democratic services maybe start ever so slightly to wind down a little bit, that we've got some capacity to move this work forward at greater pace. That said, the things that we have done so far is the flooding task group has been established with Councillors Slack, Murphy, Maelstrom and yourself, Chair, Councillor Hughes. We've already received, just through word of mouth, from the conversations at this committee, a series of submissions, principally from members, including Councillor Wilton and Councillor Linthwaite and Councillor Wayne in particular, testimonies around flooding in the Matlock and in the Ashbourne area, and the views that are around the flooding is as a result of development issues and as a result of drainage issues in those areas. So we've already got a small evidence base. Obviously, members also considered some briefing notes at the last meeting in respect of the roles and responsibilities of organisations like Severn Trent, the Environment Agency and the Lead Local Flood Authority, which is obviously hosted by Derbyshire County Council. What we're hoping to do as well is to now start to set up some evidence gathering sessions with other stakeholders relevant. So I met with 3 colleagues at the LLFA a couple of weeks ago, keen to be involved, and also there was a suggestion there that the executive member, I believe is Councillor Cupit, may also be in attendance at those sessions as well. I've also shared an online briefing that Severn Trent are giving in the next couple of weeks or so, I think, on the investment. Is it today? Oh, brilliant.
Yeah,
it's today.
I think it's Friday, is it?
It's Friday, right. Was it today or is it Friday?
There was one today because I tried to join it and realised that you had to register first and I hadn't done that. So
I'll see if I can get a readout from it. Thank you. So that something has happened with Severn Trent. There's also some work ongoing at the County Council as well, on the sort of lessons learned from local flooding incidents. So there's lots of work going on. It just needs bringing together. and start to interview individuals, and also get a further call, a proper call for evidence out to the public, of which we've already got a draft letter for. So it's hope that we can get this really moving the other side of Easter, with a view to, by the end of May or early June, having some ideally initial report, an interim report and interim recommendations to bring to the first scrutiny committee of the new municipal year. But a short piece of work, and again, just apologies to members for the speed or lack of speed in moving this forward, but we're hoping to start the new municipal year on a better footing. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I think the other point to make is that we want to expedite this. So we've got an evidence base, so we have a hypothesis of what the problem is, and therefore we can put forward a proposal for how we can solve the problem. And so really, when we go and see these statutory consultees, what we want to do is ask them their opinions on how to solve, if our understanding of the problem is correct, and what they think of our proposals for mitigating that problem, and that will make it non confrontational, we hope. And it also means that we can go out to see the statutory consultees early, and it doesn't matter that we may be slower at receiving evidence from individual members of the public, but there is a proposal that we would have a session, a daily session or a 2-day session, where we would be able to have representations from members of the public, so that they can put forward their experiences of flooding in recent years. Okay, Laura. Yeah.
Thanks. Just a couple of points. Obviously, it is vital that we get to grips as soon as possible with the current flooding, but I'm just wondering, does this task extend to sort of future-proofing the district? I'm just thinking now long-term, wet winters like this are going to become not only the norm, but probably worse. And how far ahead are we looking at in terms of decades and measures that we should be perhaps thinking about now for future prevention?
At this stage, Laura, it's I think we're looking at how we get the best advice and how we implement that advice in our planning decisions. So there are national standards for taking into account climate change and in drainage solutions. So we would, and already the LLFA requires people to accommodate those national standards in their drainage solutions. The issue is more that the solutions that are being implemented aren't solving the problem. So there's a mismatch between the advice that is coming in and going to the developers to solve in terms of drainage and the actual problem that needs to be solved. So, we need to get better solutions to the drainage problems.
Sorry, can I also just note that the minutes of the last meeting say that the task group should be populated with members who are not on the planning committee?
Yeah, we've not been successful in that respect. I think it was a noble aim to try and have a level of separation. However, I will be alert to if there are any conflicts between those members that do sit on the task group and those on planning committee. I think it's hoped that there will be a significant planning application that will have gone through by the time in which we really get going. So I don't expect that conflict to arise, Councillor.
If that conflict did arise, we'd have to declare interest and leave the meeting. So I'm on both. I'm on the planning committee and on the flooding committee, because I've had experience working for the Environment Agency, so I can bring experience to that. So, yeah. So I'll declare interest if it...
Through you, Chair, Councillor Murphy.
who is also on the planning committee.
I think we're all on the planning committee.
I think it's fair to say I've done a terrible job there, Chair.
But Councillor Murphy has taken a significant amount of interest in this topic. Yeah, he understands the issues. Yeah. Can we have somebody to note the update? Peter, would you like to note the update? Okay, seconder? Nick Whitehead. Okay, so all those in favour? Right, that's unanimous again. So it's now we're now moving on to item number 9, which is the Freedom of Information Request scrutiny.
Thanks, Chair. So this is quite an unusual one. The reason for just a short update is that obviously as a public authority, the District Council is responsible to respond to freedom of information requests. A few weeks ago, we received a freedom of information request and for some information, and that information did not exist. Lots of information does not exist we get many requests for freedom of information, and we have to consider the sharing of that information based on whether we hold it or not. Obviously, I'm anonymising the case given that we are in public session. However, the individual, we were not able to provide that information to that individual because it did not exist. Against the backdrop of the last Governance and Resources Committee, the resident sort of referenced Hasker Farm and the fact that minutes of meetings were not being taken. There was an exchange, wasn't there, Chair, of emails, and this request came through to Councillor Hughes and other members, I think yourself as well there, Councillor Wilton, to share the displeasure of not having any records of a meeting that had taken place, and Councillor Hughes wanted just to sort of bring it to the committee's attention. So just using this opportunity really just to set out that, you know, as a council we are duty bound to respond to FOI requests, and that when we do receive them, we have a positive stance of sharing information that we have and very freely, and not using very often at all some of the provisions in which to prevent or withhold information going out into the public domain. So if something really doesn't exist, then it really doesn't exist. It's also really useful bringing this item because the nature of FOIs and sometimes the services that FOIs relate to are useful in supporting members maybe to determine issues to look at as part of their work programme, which is the committee's next item of business, in a similar way that corporate complaints are a source of information for the committee to consider, in which either to shape quite firmly its work programme, i.e. lifting and shifting something in, or if members have got quite a lot of things on their work programme, they may look at sort of cumulative complaints data in which to hone in on a specific area. So, for example, we may have got a huge amount of complaints in Ashford, for example, on clean and green, and we might be able to hone in on that area. So it was really, Chair, just to sort of raise that so we do respond to FOI requests, and we've had a reasonably favourable audit report recently on freedom of information requests, in which we've received reasonable assurance, and some of the actions coming out of that are very sensible and just relate to being able to respond to them quicker. But also being able to use freedom of information data on a more cumulative level to identify areas that members might want to look into in more detail as part of the committee's work programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Nick.
Thanks, Helen. That was really clear. I'm just interested, without getting into the detail of the specific case, would it be normal that we would kind of conduct a council meeting without taking some sort of notation or minutes, and if we don't, wouldn't it be good practice to try and do so? Because surely that protects us rather than leave us open to allegations of cover-up or kind of any other false sort of accusations. But without the evidence to back it up, you can see the lens some people might look through. And I just wondered, what is the normal practice? And I get that some of it might be a resource issue, but what would we normally do? Well, what would you do? Now you're our kind of our lead officer for this.
A lead officer for notes. Thank you. You said around council meetings, and I think it's important to have a proportionate way in which we view the taking of notes. You know, this is a formal meeting of the council in a committee that is designated to exist. It's in the council's constitution, and Lucy is a professional in the work that she does. Minutes are very important, so we take minutes here. So all the formal meetings of the council must have colleagues from Democratic Services in which to take a note, because they're meetings of members and they're of a high status and a very high importance. There are then a range of other meetings that occur where members may be involved. Excuse me, Chair. And we've started to standardise particular working groups, in particular, of which there are quite a number of, and some of those notes are taken either by officers in directorates or, in the case of the Traveller Working Group, Democratic Services service that meeting. So there are different levels. In the Hasker Farm report that went to Governance and Resources Committee last month, the action plan within there, there was an action in which we're sort of just going to be setting out some standards around note taking across the organisation. The most important that came out of the independent investigation report was around meetings with third parties. So where we're having form of commercial conversations with developers, for example, with land agents or other parties, I think it's imperative that we have a note and that we keep that note based on the council's document retention policy. So there's a range of approaches. I think that we need to be healthy around it as well, and also there is a resource issue. However, what we are testing out at the moment is some transcription technology through Microsoft Teams, in which we've got automatic transcription. So if everybody logs on to a Teams meeting, you're able to have a verbatim record of the meeting, which is obviously different from a minute. But again, it's just helping us in the right direction in formalising ongoing discussions, particularly with third parties, but just getting a better way and a more recorded way of the council's business, but ultimately being proportionate with it.
So thank you. That seems really kind of sensible, and often resources are an issue. So sometimes it depends on someone within the meeting, a participant, taking the notes and sharing it with the rest of the meeting, to kind of have that sort of kind of audit trail and anyone's right to challenge that something wasn't written down. I'm interested you pick up on meetings with external people. I think that's absolutely right. But I think there's also meetings that probably happen, maybe less formal meetings happen within the council that can often be open to sort of interpretation. So I'll give an example of a meeting I went to. I went to a meeting with Paul Wilson, Steve Flitter, Tim Braun, Rob Coggins. It was a meeting that I'd requested. It was about a particular issue that I wanted to get some additional information, clarity, and also a bit of a progress, a bit of an action plan around. I was quite struck that no one took any minutes in that meeting. I took notes, and no doubt other officers took notes, but nothing came out, nothing was presented at the end of the meeting to say, you said that, I said this, we agreed this, everyone happy with it. And I was surprised at that, because I wouldn't do that in my organisation. One, about covering yourself, but also it's about having clarity, because 6 of us could go into one meeting, we could have a discussion, and all 6 of us could walk out with a completely different take on what we talked about. So just that sort of habit, that culture of sense checking and assuring each other that this is what we discussed, this is what we agreed, and then everyone has the opportunity to say, no, that's not what we agreed, this is the action we agreed, and you can then have that kind of discussion. And I'm just surprised that's not a set process, and I wonder whether that's part of the reason why we've got ourselves a little bit into trouble in some of these issues, particularly around Hasker Farm in the past, in terms of it just seems like a lack of transparency. And I know it's not, I kind of know it's kind of not a deliberate or cynical attempt, but again, it's how you cover yourself.
Thank you, Chair. When we go on site visits, the planning site visits, notes are never taken any time. But we come back at night, next day or night, and we have a proper meeting here, and notes, agenda is obviously minuted. But on site visits, sometimes you get parish councillors coming along and you invite them to speak, and then they aren't ever recorded. So I don't know if that should be, somebody should go and take minutes at site visits. I don't know. It's just, you know, with all this Asker Farm issue, it enlightens you to be very, very cautious, doesn't it, really?
I mean, that's all part of delivering the action plan, is being clear on what's the arrangements for each of the types of interactions that we have. Obviously, meetings with members, obviously site visits, and as we've talked about, different formal meetings of the council. I think, and again, one of the areas in the plan is around having those standards and just having some clear ways of working. And as I've said, resources are a bit of an issue, but we've got to find a way.
Nick.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I agree. It needs to be proportionate, because we can't write everything down all the time, and it needs to be at the right space. But I think we need to lead on it as well. So what I do if I'm having not similar meetings to yourself, where I'll play back my understanding, and I'll play back what the actions are as well, and what I'm expecting out of it. And I would hope that someone responds, and also usually a timescale, because we're devils for setting stuff and then not putting a ready timescale to it. To try and get everyone signed up to that, to say, right, okay, this is when I'm going to expect a product or something out of it. And I think we need to do that as well as the officers and stuff. So be part of that. It's a two-way street and stuff, doing it, not just rely on those guys to do it.
Can I suggest, Laura?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I appreciate what a difficult issue this is, and I think it's good that it is being addressed. I mean, obviously it's not always easy to tell when a conversation becomes a meeting, and you can't minute every conversation that every officer has, but if the emphasis is moving forward is going to be to err on the side of caution, then absolutely I applaud that. But I just had a quick question, actually. Do we record in any way the amount of time and resource we are spending responding to FOI requests?
In some cases, yes, because legally there are resource limits attached to certain FOIs. So if we have FOIs that are submitted that require us to start a clock, then we're able to do so. There are some specific technical guidelines around the amount of time that you can spend on one. I think 18 hours is coming to mind, but I'm happy to share the ICO guidance on it. But those before we actually, when we get, so you get an FOI in, and then you try and assess how long it's going to take, whether you hold the information for a start, and then how long it's going to take, and you sort of keep a note of how long they're taking, because you may get a series of them on the same subject, possibly from the same individual. So you do keep a tab on how long it is taking, because if it takes too long, you're able then to ask the requester if they can make their next request even shorter, because you're running out of time in which to fulfil their requests. So we do it, but that's only on those FOIs where it's going to take a lot of time. We don't do it as a matter of course in terms of the smaller requests that we get. This one, for example, in which we didn't hold the information, we wouldn't set the clock on it if we didn't hold the information So I will share it round with the committee, but it is a fair old resource that we do have. The FOI officer is my business support manager, so is a senior manager in the organisation, and she is supported in doing that role by another member of staff in the business support team. So I'll happily go away and get some additional information for members on that, Chair. But it can take a lot of time, but we don't, as a matter of course, keep a log on absolutely every request. Only those where we know we're going to possibly run out of time, as per the ICO's guidance.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't seeking to add any more work to that process by asking for it to be measured. I just wondered if it was being.
Thank you. Can I then move that we note your... Oh, you want to go in?
Just quickly, I think we need to optimise the number of meetings and committees. And my advice to Nick would be, if you have an informal meeting with Councillor Flitter, you record it on your email device to the council of exactly what happened.
Thank you. Can I note that can I propose that we note your verbal report, and also note the comments about informal meetings between members and officers, that and possibly the need for proportionate note taking of those meetings, and also the issue that about site visits and potentially the need to record the information or the exchange in site visits, as they will be material to any planning application discussion, and we consider those as part of your, or they are considered in the action plan that you're developing for.
Would we need to note as third party? Because I think that was the emphasis.
Well, I think we're already.
I think that would be broad. I know we sort of said specific events, but if it's third party, it might encompass things we might not have considered as part and parcel.
I think we're already doing that. I think that's already part of the action plan. I was just trying to think of the new areas that may not be in the action plan.
I'm just thinking about the planning site visits, and I seem to recall that there was some guidance about the conduct of site visits, and really we're not really supposed to encourage discussion at site visits. We're supposed to just go and look and ask essential questions about what we're seeing, but we don't want to fall into the trap of, if it becomes minuted, then we're effectively inviting people to make submissions and representations which aren't before the whole committee, because not everybody can be there.
The issue is that if a question is answered, then the answer only goes to those members who are on the site visit, not the committee, who then have to make a decision. So the rest of the members aren't in full appreciation of the information that's been provided. So it's not a legal decision.
Can I just? Yeah, that's right, Laura. But some of the parish councillors come along. I've made an appointment. So they're going to attend the site visits. And they put their points of view forward, so they really want recording, don't they?
Well, should we actually be discouraging that and inviting them to make those points at the planning committee meeting?
We do. We say, are you coming tonight to the meeting? Said, well, no. They'd sooner come to a site visit rather than attend a meeting sometimes.
Well, I think that is potentially dangerous, whether it's minuted or not, really, isn't it?
But we need to record what they're saying, though. Because they are parish councillors of that ward, you see, or parish town.
Thank you, Chair. So members may recall we're doing a review of the effectiveness and the support to planning committee at the moment, and one of the areas that has come up within that is the role and function of site visits. The method for that was just a very basic collection of views of officers and members as to how what are the inputs into planning committee, how the committee operates. As part of that, site visits came up quite strongly, and that there is some suggestions suggestions, particularly that site visits are moving away from their actual purpose, which is to look and to be able to see the development and ensure, that particularly for those members that might struggle not to be able to visualise something that is in written form, how something looks. The purpose of that site visit is absolutely that. It's to use eyes and ears and not necessarily talk very much on the site visit. That is for the role of the committee. So I think that will be quite strongly reminded as part of the review of the planning committee itself. There's some fairly strong guidance on that from the local planning service, from the LGA, and also from ADSO, which is the Association of Democratic Services Officers, about the sort of parameters for planning committee site visits. It is principally there for people to look and to hear. It's really not to engage in conversations. That is for planning committee itself. Thank you, Chair.
So you would advise that we don't include that last point on the...
I would need to look in more detail, and I would wish to take the advice from the development manager, Chris Whitmore, on that, just to see how site visits operate in other areas and whether a note is taken or not. But the point is very clear that the site visit isn't there to engage in extensive discussions about the merits of the application or otherwise. It is there to support members to understand the development so they can make the best possible decision when they go to committee.
Okay, I think that's a steer that we don't include it. So if we can note or receive the report and note the suggestion that Councillor Whitehead has made about informal meetings between members and officers for proportionate levels of recording. Okay, so I'm putting that forward. Nick Wilton is seconding. All those in favour? Right, that's unanimous again. And that brings us to the Scrutiny Committee Work Programme, which is the last thing on our agenda. So, I don't know if you want to introduce this, Helen. I had one or 2 points I wanted to make on it.
Well, this is the last meeting of this municipal year, Chair. So obviously we're now looking at sort of moving forward, and I think it's important really just to, if members will allow, just to go through things line by line. I think it's important to have the Scrutiny Work Programme on the agenda for all meetings, but also within that as well, being able to bring the council's forward plan of decisions, just so members are aware. As a committee system authority, the council is not obliged to create a forward plan, but it does, in order to demonstrate openness and transparency around the decisions that it wants to make. And as Claire will know, I'm doing a lot of work at the moment within the organisation to make sure that as many decisions we are planning for as possible, with a view to support a strengthened planning, corporate planning system within the organisation, but also to support this committee in identifying where it might want to get involved in some decisions, and undertake some form of pre-scrutiny prior to them being made. So I would like to suggest that we have the forward plan of decisions on the agenda for each of the scrutiny committees going forward. The main areas of business that I think the council, that this committee will consider, will ultimately be performance reports, as Claire has very diligently been putting forward. So I will be encouraging members to receive quarterly based performance reports, and as we move into the next municipal year, and as we discussed at the committee's last meeting, creation of a performance report that better integrates risk and financial information into it. So members are getting a true three-dimensional view of the council's performance, not just through a service lens, but also through a risk and a finance lens, which will lead to deeper questions and a better understanding and grip of members of how our council is performing at that as a backwards look, and also hopefully if there's any forwards look information there as well. So the performance reports will ultimately provide the backbone of information that I would hope members would want to receive. There's then the sort of ad hoc items that members are wanting to look at each meeting, and we've had some discussions this evening, Chair, about things like consultation, having a bit of a deep dive on consultation in particular. So I'd probably suggest that we bring that onto the work programme, possibly either the first or even the second meeting of the next municipal year, conscious that we also talked at the start of the agenda around corporate plan KPIs and bringing that, and that will be quite a chunky item, so maybe having a single-ish item agenda for the first meeting of the municipal year, which is the sort of backwards look Q4 performance data, as well as the new suite of KPIs aligned to the corporate plan. So that will be the first meeting, possibly consultation, the second meeting in the municipal year. We will also look to bring forward the report arising from the flooding work. So hopefully that will come to the first meeting of the new municipal year as well. So it'll be a fairly chunky first meeting for members. I think then second to that is the order in which some of the other work that is on that plan comes forward. I have to give a shout out at this moment in time to resources and making sure that we're not over-promising and under-delivering. There's a question already, Chair. I'm going to, from Councillor Wilton.
Hi, it was really just to sort of advise maybe that the Q4 and year-end stuff actually waits till the following session. One, because there'll be quite a lot of workload, and two, because we've already known the stats sort of take a while to follow up, and that's certainly from a finance point of view, and I imagine from the quarterly review. So picking up all the waste data, you're not going to have that all ratified and cleared out for year-end as well. And financial-wise as well, you'd be still picking up a lot of the debt issues and bits and pieces that we've talked about already. Just as I say, just so we've got a better quality output, that's all.
Thank you. So I think, Chair, it's just really getting a sense from members on the priority order of other items on the work programme as it is. So we've got the HR related issue, and just to provide an update on that, the work internally on the council's approach to recruitment and retention. So that's sort of coming out of those papers that Paul Wilson, our Chief Executive, has been providing to council. That work is actually scheduled within the department to start in Q1. So obviously starting in April, and I think it's whether we want to identify any members now that might be interested in joining that in on that work, or whether we schedule it as a report to come forward to a future meeting of the committee.
Okay. Can we take them in order, because it's I think I was getting a bit lost in the. So we have. We're proposing then that we move we consider consultation and engagement. Actually, mine's got things in twice. That's why I'm getting confused. Can you go through the ones that will happen at individual meetings? I think is what I want.
So
totally confused here.
No problem. Sorry, Chair. So the regular items that will go on every agenda will be the work programme and the forward plan of decisions. And then at the first meeting in the new municipal year, we're going to have a bit of a sort of KPI special, if that's all right. That makes sense from a timing perspective, so we're setting off on the right foot as soon as possible. And we've then got the second meeting of the new municipal year, looking at Q4 data, and obviously a proposal on consultation and the lessons learnt from the Ashbourne consultation. I would also probably say at that second meeting we'd probably receive the report on flooding if we can't get it to the first one. So I'm making a note as well. And then it's really, Chair, populating the rest of the programme with other routine items such as Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 performance. So I would probably say at the second meeting we want to be considering Q4 and possibly Q1. We might have got that, Claire? No, it will be late May, won't it? No, it'll be the second meeting. Yeah.
Have to do it on my fingers, but yeah, Q1's April, May, June.
We'll have something. The second meeting, which will probably be in the autumn time. Might be, yeah. We'd need to work through the calendar, but potentially, yeah. Yeah. So it's really just following through with the way in which we've brought performance information to the committee over the course of this year.
In terms of the working of the council, enhancement of staff recruitment and retention seems to be very high, in a high priority, and I think my feeling is that needs to be brought forward to the first meeting, really. That's something we should be considering very early on.
Okay.
The others are ones that we can take as and when. They don't impact on the working of the council. They're outcomes of the council, and therefore slightly lower down in priorities, in my opinion. Was it Nick Whitehead? You have an issue.
I just wonder whether it looks a bit light. If this is the programme for the year ahead, I absolutely agree, David, that doing the HR one as soon in the next meeting would be absolutely kind of a perfect time to sort of to have a look at that. But just I think as we get through the year, we end up are we only then looking at data? Because I would really like to look at 106 monies. I'd like to really scrutinise, and I know again it's linked to planning, and it's a little bit like the kind of the issue we have with Severn Trent. We get all of these authorities saying, yeah, no problem, you can build houses there because the GP practice can take it, the schools can take it, and their information just seems so flawed. I would really like to scrutinise and challenge how we understand how Section 106 money works, and how does that actually filter back to our communities? Because my understanding is you can give the ICB some money for a development in Matlock, but the ICB don't have to spend that money on a Matlock practice. They can go and spend it down in Swaddling Co. or up. And to me, that doesn't seem right. And I think we should be auditing how that is done. And it seems perfect for the Scrutiny Committee. And I just wonder whether we've got quite a light. I'm not saying we should do it because I say we should do it, but when I look at that looks quite a light agenda. Because once we've taken note of some kind of data, asked a few questions on it, I can't imagine those agenda items are going to be taking much more than half an hour to get through. And then I wonder the rest of the programme then just feels a little bit light if we're doing this for a whole year ahead. That was just my take.
All I was going to say was that there was going to be a lot of work behind it that's building up to it as well, and what maybe, because if we're looking at the work bank each time, then maybe we pick that up in the first session of the new, see how everything's going, because if we've got the big KPI stuff, it's no good stacking officers up with loads of work to basically wait for it to sort of happen. But I think we monitor as we go on and pick up good work, because I agree with the Section 106 stuff. We need to work out what's going on there, but conscious we walk before we run.
It's just really some queries. I mean, it sounds like I agree with Nick that we've got some. It looks like after we get through these bigger items, there's precious little, perhaps, so that, you know, the floor is open. The trouble with the big items is that they're all urgent. The trouble with the big items is they're all urgent. So I would say that public consultation procedures are urgent. KPIs, I don't know, possibly maybe they can wait to a second meeting, but my fundamental question is, what is the meeting cycle? So how often are we expecting to meet? I can see what happened last year, but is there a case for intensifying the rate of meetings slightly?
I presume we're going to include some scrutiny onto the waste contract in the next year. I'm not sure. Is that decided, or is that in intention?
I think there's more likely to be a waste contract subcommittee or working group because it's such a big issue and it's going to go on for some time. And in the last cycle, there was such a subcommittee or working group that looked at that and was able to look intensively at that, like with the travellers.
Yeah, can I just respond? Well, I did actually put together a terms of reference for that, but then we took it away from here because there was already, otherwise we're just doubling it up basically. Because we did bring it here before, it's one of the initial ones.
There is another area that was information systems as well as a 2BC.
So I think it's healthy that there are gaps for members on the work programme for things to come in and go out also and be prioritised and then deprioritised. That's the sign of a good work programme. It's also helpful when we are resource light, so we're not over promising and under delivering. I think what I would say is that we're just in the process of coming up with the calendar, aren't we, Lucy? And I've got here 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 5 meetings of the committee next year. So we've got one in June, August, October, January, and March. So I think what's useful to have as principles that really no more than 2 substantive items on an agenda, so members can come and have ultimately a couple of hours, and then a little bit of work done in between meetings to do things in a little bit more depth, and ultimately that prep for committee meetings. So I would say to members no more than 2 items to get the very best out of the time that you've got available. Chair, Councillor G would like to come in.
I just wondered, including a meeting like that in August, is that a good plan? Because, are we going to have good attendance?
It's a draft plan at this moment in time, but I'll take views from members if they think that a meeting on the 22nd of August is a good idea or not. Yeah.
I was just going to say I had assumed that at some point we would have another sort of short rescoping session so that members can come forward with any new issues that are arising from what's happening or what's coming through from our individual groups.
Okay, I think I suggest that we note the ideas that have come up of Section 106 money, information systems, and any others that appeared that are given by email perhaps, and we have a session at the next meeting on the new ideas. And it would be useful if you can consult other members of your groups. So because we're just the eyes and ears, we're just the funnel. In terms, yeah.
I think as well, if members also, we talked about town and parish councils, for members to get out there widely to see if there are any issues that they want to bring forward. I'm sure members on here will sit on other voluntary sector bodies in the Derbyshire Dales, bring those issues in, and I think now as the sort of scrutiny committee and the scrutiny function at the council gathers more pace, Chair, it might be a good time now to start to find ways in which to start to have a more structured way in which to prioritise things that come on the agenda, sort of things that are in alignment with the corporate plan, for example, to make sure that everyone's pushing in the same direction.
That seems a sensible thing to do. Would you be able to identify criteria for the next meeting as well?
Can do, yeah. We could have a team session, perhaps an hour or so, even well in advance of the next meeting, which, if the current calendar is anything to go by, that's the 27th of June.
Mm-hmm. Can we have it a bit earlier than that? I mean, is
Yes.
there other issues associated with? It does seem to be quite a lot. We're now in, what are we, March? But it's early March. We've only had 2 months this year, and 27th of June is 4 months away, effectively.
But so there will be work ongoing during that period. We've got the flooding review. We'll have got the piece of work that will be ongoing around HR in particular. So there will be scrutiny going on. There just won't be a formal committee meeting to ultimately dock into.
Can I maybe suggest we do a midpoint Teams session for half an hour or something to pulse check it?
I was going to
if we need
suggest
to
that.
do something and escalate it, then we do. But then just conscious we don't all have to come here.
I was going to suggest that we have some sort of progress review in interim. So so we got early May, say, so we know where we're going and if there's going to be any delay.
No, I'd support that, Chair, but could we sort of wrap in Laura's suggestion, which actually maybe if we did a little bit of light touch scoping within that team session as well. So if we had an hour, half hour on progress, half hour on a little bit of a scope in terms of what we'd like to start thinking about, then we get a bit ahead of the game then, don't we? Also, if we're agreeing our work programme as early as possible, the deadlines might be quite far away for them, but at least gives officers insight into what's coming, and it might help them in terms of when they're preparing other things to know that will also be relevant for a future agenda item. But
Understood. I think that's a sensible suggestion. And Helen suggested it could happen just after the annual general meeting, so that we take into consideration. We then have the new committee taking it forward.
I'm assuming the Teams meeting would be recorded, following the previous comments about minuting.
Well, we might come, as we're a formal committee, we might need to meet formally, and that would mean coming in here, I'm afraid. Gareth G's left the room, so he can't vote. But he won't be able to vote on this, so we might as well carry on with the. Might as well go to the vote. So we're voting for. Now, we're voting to have an interim meeting between, first of all, the calendar of meetings, which is in June, August, October, and December and March, with an interim meeting to launch in the end of May after the AGM. And at that meeting, we're going to discuss the programme for the year, including new opportunities, and we'll have updates on the scrutiny activities that are taking place at the time. And we're proposing those scrutiny activities will include the enhancement of staff recruitment and retention policies, and the flooding project, and also I guess we'll be able to get an update on the KPIs at that meeting as well. But this isn't necessarily a final version of those, but where we are in terms of the KPIs and the KPI proposals. So does that meet with your approval, Nick? Okay, do you want to move that? Okay, Nick's moving that. Anybody want a second? Second, Peter. Okay, all those in favour? Right, that's not unanimous, Roger. All right. Okay, you're abstaining, okay. And you've noted that Gareth G left the room. Thank you.